Welcome to the B Spot, the podcast where we share simple ways to live life well, feel good, and grow every day. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Blair, and I'm so excited you're here. Today, we're going to talk about living your life on purpose, with intention, and off of autopilot. What do I mean by that? What do I mean is that I decided over 3 years ago that I was going to step away from a wonderful position as a public school superintendent to live a life with intention so that every day I would experience love, peace, joy, and fulfillment. That decision was a very hard decision to make, but it was one that now, looking back 3 years ago, I'm excited and super confident that I made the right choice. So it's time for you to decide, are you in a place where you're struggling, you're mentally frustrated, you don't know if you're in the right relationship, living in the right home, if you're even on the right job? And that may be because you may not have found your authentic self. You may not be along the journey where you're growing with people around you that are growing. You may be the sharpest knife in the drawer, meaning your circle of friends. You may be the friend that has more money, that has more emotional intelligence, that has more confidence, that may even look better. And you're always the one that's giving, pouring out. And now it's time for you to focus on you. You may be that person that's driving, doing things for others, working in the community, serving in your church, doing the most on your job, and you're not fulfilled. You may even be making a great salary, have all the amenities in life, but you're feeling unfulfilled. Well, this message and this talk today is for you. I was one of those people. 3 years ago, I served as a public school superintendent. Now, that job in itself was a wonderful position. I loved being a school superintendent. I love the fact that I could work with a school board, a community, and support central office staff members, principals, assistant principals, and all the teachers and the staff that supported scholars in our schools. I was excited about that work, but I wasn't fulfilled in that work. Now, before that, I was a central office administrator. I had worked in Chicago. I worked in large districts in Alabama, small districts, rural districts. I have been there, done that. I had a 20-something year career where I was at what I would consider the pinnacle, at the top position in a school district as school superintendent. But what happened to me during the pandemic, I found my worth. What do I mean by that? As I was going through the pandemic, and the story is that while you're serving others, sometimes you get lost serving yourself. Well, during the pandemic, there were so many things that were new to us, new to me, regarding how do I lead a school district with this unknown, mysterious illness that was floating around? How do I protect myself, but also protect the teachers, the principals, all of our staff, our scholars, our community members that engage with our schools? How do we protect people? And that was a very stressful job. We were listening to our local news. We were listening to health officials, state, federal, and the guidance was almost all over the place. We had a president at the time, who's our current president, Donald Trump, whom I do not support. That president was very reckless in terms of how we were told to treat COVID. There were ways that looked like going into the sun from drinking bleach. No one believed in testing and mitigating isolation strategies, or even making sure that you were not in close contact to others. There was so misinformation and misguidance that it made it hard to run a school district where we're used to procedures. We have board policies, we have state laws, federal laws, statutes. We have requirements of how we have schools to operate, with health and safety being at our front of everything we do. So it was so difficult trying to handle all of the misinformation or information and make the best decisions. And while doing so, I lost my passion for the work, meaning that I love the fact that I could work with teachers, administrators, and other people to ensure that scholars were learning. But I lost my passion of the administration of it, working around the rules and procedures, the board governance, all of the complaints, all the things that just made this not even a 9 to 5 job, but this sometimes 7 in the morning to 10 at night, 5-6 days a week, weekends included, community work, going to churches, doing activism work, all those things that were connected to community leadership but also being the leader of the school district. So I lost sight of Christopher Blair. So I had to find my authentic self. So the first thing I started to identify was, in order for me to live intentionally, I had to step away from a job where I began to find out who I really was. Now, my mother raised me well, and I give credit to my mother. I love my dad. He was a great guy, but my mother gave more guidance in terms of structures around going to school, finding a sense of spirituality, understanding how to be accountable for my time and what I do, even how to clean clothes and how to cook, all those things. My dad taught me things like, yes, be responsible. I had a child that was in high school. We have to talk about that later on, a whole nother episode of having a child while you're in high school. But in this episode, we're going to talk about getting your life off of autopilot. But that being said, my dad taught me things of being a man, how to be responsible for the child, get a job, take care of your responsibilities, so on and so forth. But he did not teach me how to be emotionally in tune with who I am as an individual. What do I really like? What do I really enjoy? Who do I like spending my time with? How do I like to feel about certain things? How do I share emotions without thinking that I'm weak or that I'm less than, because I may cry, but also laugh. I may have anger, but also can show empathy. All of those spectrum of feelings. My dad didn't teach me that, but I did learn some of those things from the mother and the father put together. But I realized that 3 years ago, I was in a place where I was very unhappy as a school superintendent. And I wanted to break away from that 9 to 5 autopilot rat race. And so in doing so, I began to really think about, who am I as an individual? Well, I decided there are 4 things I wanted. I wanted more love in my life. I wanted more fulfillment in my life. I wanted more peace in my life. And I wanted to make sure I had joy. And my current work wasn't giving me peace, love, fulfillment, or joy. My relationships weren't giving me peace, love, fulfillment, and joy. The money I was making wasn't giving me that. The community work, all of those things. So I had to say, Christopher, why not? What is it that you are not getting about your authentic self? You know what? I began to realize that I was a very productive and successful teenager, high school student. I could do anything that I put my hand to do, but I did a lot of things because other people saw that in me, not that I really saw it in myself. And I may be much like you, where you're very credible, meaning you've experienced things, you've gone to college, gotten a degree, and you've done it because your mother said you're able to do it, or you've done it because other people see it in you. But what do you see for yourself? I didn't see for myself what I really wanted. But you know what I began to see? I began to see that I wanted time freedom. I wanted money freedom. I wanted to make sure that I didn't have to get up at 7 o'clock every morning to be accountable for making sure the school buses were running and the buildings were ready and the lunches were, the breakfast was served, all those things. I said, I didn't really want to do that every day. I wanted to do something that, yes, I would make money with the career and the passions, but how could I do that in a more authentic way where I found joy in doing it? So I decided, what are my skill sets? I want to be in a place where I live and I work and I enjoy life. So I found my skill sets. Very skillful when it came to leadership, very skillful when it came to working with educational aspects of the classroom, what we may call academics or instruction. Very skillful in planning, understanding how systems, processes, and people create these organizational strategies that create outcomes that get you what you want, but also skillful at bringing people together so that someone's individual skill set works in tandem with another person. And we have this individual efficacy, that belief you can do something and make a difference, working with another person that becomes what we call collective efficacy, that you can make a joint impact. Very skillful at bringing people together to do that work. And so I realized that, Christopher, you can step away from this job as a superintendent, package up your skill set, and go work for yourself. And that's what I did. I broke away. But I realized that I had so much more to give and my value. While during that pandemic, I had to take comments from the school board, from the community. You don't know what you're doing. You're killing the kids. You're making everyone sick. All of those things. When someone died, it was my fault. Someone caught COVID. To be a scholar or a parent or community member, I did it because I allowed children to go to school. They rode the bus, or all those things that everyone else was dealing with this unknown disease or virus was being blamed on me. And it took a mental toll. And I said to myself, I'm worth more than this. I'm working this with the best that I have, just like everyone else. This is new to me. I've never been through a global pandemic. I've never had a sickness that comes through a community and no one can see it and smell it and feel it until it hits your body. No, I had never done that before. So I decided I was worth more than that. I could use my brain in other ways to be productive. If I'm a teacher, an English teacher, I could go be a lawyer if I choose. I could do anything with my brain other than having to run a school district. So when I stepped away, I realized three things started to occur. I had to find out who I really was. I started living my more authentic self. Secondly, I had to re-educate myself around what am I great at. I took a fellowship. That fellowship was around how to build racial equity networks, meaning how do you work with other people around race and dismantling those barriers that exist because of historical racism or even now current racial actions that happen in communities or systems that perpetuate racism. So I had to work around that. But in addition, I had to learn what is the vision that I have for myself. So three things happened. I began to think, who am I? I re-educated myself and I envisioned a life. My vision included being in a job I enjoyed or working in a career now that I had more passion and intention, being in a relationship that was more satisfying and fulfilling, where I was giving, but also receiving, because you may be in that place where you're the person pouring and pouring and pouring into others, but nothing is coming back to you and your cup is empty. We cannot live that way. So in doing so, I determined on my vision board, I wanted to have time freedom, financial freedom, spiritual freedom, physical freedom, mental freedom. So I broke away from that matrix and I got my life off of autopilot by doing those three things, thinking more of my higher self, being in tune with my consciousness. What vibration am I on? Meaning, what am I attracting? Am I bringing things in my life that's giving me joy, or am I attracting and speaking things that's bringing the negativity and bringing my energy down? So I started to do that work, and I'll get more into the other episodes around that work of finding your higher self. But once I found out I wasn't my higher self, I began to work on that with that re-education. And that's some of the things that I read all the time. This is one of the books, Don't Believe Everything You Think. I started reading around how my mind is controlling the actions. So some of the things I was trained to think, some of the thoughts that were in my head were out of experience, meaning I had thought them before, or I thought that was the way I should be thinking now, but they weren't the thoughts that would make me grow and live and feel more fulfilled and satisfied. So I had to really work on my mind in that re-educating myself. And then lastly, I began to vision more, writing down, making the vision plain, right? Making it where I said, how much money do I really want to make? Although superintendency, you make great money, you're contracted, but I can make more than that. Right? What city do I want to live in? At the time, I was living in Montgomery, Alabama. I wanted more. I wanted a city that had more activities. I was 47 at the time, 48, 49, moving into that when I was finding this sense of consciousness. But when I finally left, I decided I wanted to live in a different city. So I moved outside of Alabama, but I had to envision what I wanted for myself. And then I also had to think about what types of people do I want to engage with? I had to break some of my friendships. That circle of friends, I had to change that. I had to change some relationships, break up with some people that were in my life long term. But it all worked out for the good. So I'm challenging you, if you're listening to this podcast or even watching the video, are you living your authentic self? Are you living that life where you now have whatever you determine it to be? Mine are love, peace, joy, and fulfillment. Do you have that? If you want that life, then you have to re-examine, how did you get here, so that you can look back and say, these are the things that caused me to be where I am. How do I make choices today? By finding my authentic self, re-educating myself, and envisioning something for my future. So here's my challenge. Rethink those things today. If you're that person that you're feeling stuck, you're feeling like you're in a relationship, you're in a home, you're doing a job you don't enjoy, then you are not living with intention and purpose. And this podcast is speaking to you today. Rethink that. Where are you in your life? Where do you want to go? How do you re-educate yourself and find yourself in a place where you're now surrounded, living in a place where you live and enjoy, having the experiences of travel, having more financial freedom? Because as you begin to speak and see that, the universe will bring it to you. I'm a living witness of it. So that's my challenge. If this podcast resonated with you, send me a message, DM me, make a comment that you want to hear more around how do you break away from the matrix and get your life off of autopilot. I have been excited to share this with you today. I'm excited to talk more. So join me again, your host, Dr. Christopher Blair, in the B Spot, the podcast where we speak simple truths to live life well, feel good, and grow every day.